seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Oh, the man is out on the field.
That's another knockdown. You're not getting up till he got out.
You believe in miracles? Yes.
You are now listening to the All Things Sport Podcast with your hosts, Damian Banks and Pierre Banks on Spreaker Radio. Fellas, you know what to do.
What's happening? What's up? What's going on? It's the All Things Sport Podcast, and I'm Damian Banks.
And of course, I'm Pierre Banks.
Pierre, another edition of ATS, as I love to call it, the All Things Sport Podcast, where you and myself give our listeners all things sport. Pierre, what's the word, Johannesburg?
Man, the NBA playoffs right now, man. It's, I judge my life and how everything is going off of the current sporting events, man. And right now, the playoffs are carrying me through both NBA and NHL, because the NHL playoffs are great as well. Other than that, I can't call it. What's going on your way, man?
Well, right now, Pierre, myself, I'm in the beautiful Banks Boy Studios in Durham, North Carolina. And, at 12:05 a.m., it's going to be my daughter Loxley's. She's going to be 2 weeks old, man. I don't know if that's a birthday. Is it a 2-week birthday? She's going to be 2 weeks old. So my life has consisted of daddy duties and sports.
Yeah, Damien, I just don't want you to be one of those types of parents that Loxley is 5 years old and you run around telling people she's 60 months, man. There has to be a cutoff limit to where you stop telling people how many months your child is. What should the cutoff limit be for describing your child's age in months?
I'm not sure. I never understood that as well. When you see someone with a child and how old is she or how old is he? Oh, she's 76 months. I'm like, huh? How old is that? I mean, what are you a judge? That's what prosecutors and judges give out sentences in. They give it out in months. So especially in Durham, you hear the judge say you got 320 months. You're like, oh, that's not bad. Until you do the math, 320 months is a hell of a lot of years, my friend.
Once your child gets to be a year old, you are no longer allowed to start describing that child's age in months. That goes for everybody. I don't want to hear 26 months anymore. I don't want to hear anything past 11 months.
Yeah, I never understood that either. But basically, man, that's what my life has consisted of this past week. Just getting adjusted to being a parent, first-time parent, first child. My wife and I, just trying to learn the ropes. We're from a large family of 17, so I've been around kids my whole life, but I don't have any. And, just learning the ropes, man, just learning when she cries. What is she crying about? Is she hungry? Does she need to be changed? Is she mad? We're just learning the ropes right now. So, but it has enabled me to catch up on my sports. And today, man, I think I watched the spelling bee like most of the day. Man, how do these kids know these words, man?
I don't know, but on Full House, Stephanie Tanner used to go through the dictionary and practice the words. I guess that's how they do it. I wasn't into doing stuff like that as a child. I was always into going outside and playing something, man. School's just something that came naturally.
Now, I will never say never, Pierre, but I can't see myself subjugating Loxley to, trying to be a spelling bee champion. As long as she makes good grades and stays out of trouble, my number one goal is to keep her off the pole. I've said that before, and I'll say it again.
You're something else, man.
I just don't want to, have her, let's say she's 19, 20 years old. She's talking to me, daddy. She's like, you're still calling me daddy because that's my little girl. And I'm like, how are you today, Loxley? How's everything been going? Well, it's the things at the club. I made about $300 this week at the club. Like, what club are you talking about? The racket club? Which club are you referring to, Loxley? Oh, Teasers on Main Street. I'm like, what? No. No, come on, Loxley. Don't do it, man. So that's my number one goal. You don't have to be a spelling bee champ.
First, is that the name of a club in Durham?
It is. Teasers.
How do you know the name and location of that club?
It's 2 strip clubs in Durham, and that's one of the 2 strip clubs. And the other I mean, the other is Diamond Girls, and Teasers is the more upscale of the two. So I chose Teasers, but Diamond Girls has a lot of traffic going through there as well. But Teasers is the more upscale of the two. But I wouldn't even want her working at the upscale club. So, nothing against strippers, man.
You know an awful lot of information about these clubs, man, and the traffic and, what type of clubs they are, the insides, is it upscales and not upscales? What's going on, man?
That was in my younger years. I'm like the Far Side. In my younger years, I used to sport a shag. That was in my younger years, man. But we digress, man. We're getting totally off subject. This is the All Things Sport podcast where Pierre and myself give you all things sport. Again, thank you for all the listens that you give us on the podcast. Go to banksboy.com to download the podcast, to look at the YouTube channel, to read the blogs. Pierre and Rudy Mondragon give you the knockout blow in our YouTube channel, The Split Decision. So just continue to support us and what we do, and we continue to thank you with all of our hearts, man.
Shout out to you, Damien, for putting together the trailer for your documentary that you have coming out, Bad Vad Lee, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's been a long process. Followed Vad Lee, which is a quarterback from James Madison University. Followed him throughout his senior season. He is a Durham, North Carolina native, like ourselves. Graduated from Hillside High School. I'm a Southern Durham graduate, but I didn't hold that against him. He went to Georgia Tech after graduation, transferred from Georgia Tech to James Madison, set all kinds of records at James Madison, looking to continue his career professionally. Hasn't been picked up for a team as of yet, but I'm sure that's going to happen. Vad broke his foot with about 4 games left into his senior season. So I'm doing that documentary. I haven't released the first trailer as of yet. Going to release the first trailer today as you're listening. So I'm going to release that first trailer for the documentary, Bad Vad Lee, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's a shout out to my father, my pops, man. His favorite movie, one of his favorite movies was Clint Eastwood, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So I had to name that movie after try to make a play with words, so to speak, on that Clint Eastwood classic. So yeah, man, I've been working a lot lately, just trying to perfect the craft, been trying to get the people what they want. So without further ado, Pierre, let's get into it, man.
The All Things Sport Hot Topic.
Like you said, NHL playoffs, amazing. Right now, the finals are set in the NHL playoffs. You got Pittsburgh eking out that 2-1 win in Game 7 versus Tampa Bay. And then you got a first-timer.
The San Jose Sharks going to their first NHL finals ever.
Knocking off the St. Louis Blues. Got to be pretty exciting for San Jose. They don't have a professional basketball team. They don't have a professional football team. They did have a pretty dominant arena football team. Don't know if those guys are still playing. I think there was a San Jose SaberCats or something like that. But the San Jose Sharks making their first appearance in the NHL Finals, taking on Sid the Kid and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like you said, NBA playoffs. It's going down in the playoffs right now, man. Western Conference Finals and Eastern Conference Finals. OKC and the Warriors. Toronto and the Cavs. It's a beautiful time right now in the world of sports. Even though football season is not going on right now, you do have baseball season going on. It's early in the season, but you got great stories in baseball. You got Poppy having, supposedly, I use air quotations, his last season, having a historic last season in Boston. You got Bryce Harper, started off the season red hot. He's cooled down in the month of May due to the pitching has changed on him in the month of May. Baseball is real crazy right now. The NBA playoffs are crazy, man. Bron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love taking on the Toronto Raptors. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan and company. And Pierre, after 2 games in this series, I pretty much wrote the Raptors off. 2 blowout wins in Cleveland by the Cavaliers. Games were not even close. So, of course I don't trust the Toronto Raptors. So I'm thinking, hey man, they're going to get swept like a old carpet. But lo and behold, Toronto grew a pair and actually went home to the North and won their 2 games in Toronto. How do you love that? What do you think about Toronto holding serve at home and pretty much shocking the Cavaliers?
It's an unbelievable turnaround is what it was. A lot of people like to talk about how unlikely it is for Oklahoma City to be controlling the series against the Warriors the way they are, and we'll talk about that a little later. But in actuality, the real surprise is the way that Kyle Lowry really stepped up in games 3 and 4. The way that DeMar DeRozan has really been playing well the entire series. Biyombo.
Nobody beats the Biz.
Playing as well as he's been playing and coming together on their home floor, finding that energy and then pulling out 2 victories against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they didn't just pull out 2 victories. They actually controlled both of those games from really start to finish. And I think a lot of that had to do with the play of Kyrie Irving. And, a lot of credit goes to LeBron James, which it should. He's the best player in the world. He's the leader of that team. But as Kyrie Irving goes, so goes the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, exactly, Pierre. Toronto went home. They got that home cooking, that good Toronto food, that good Toronto atmosphere. And, that crowd up there really energized them. Most notably Bismack Biyombo, like you said before, nobody beats the Biz. I think in game 3 he had like 20, what do you have, 26, 27 rebounds? I don't know the exact number, but he went crazy. And he fed off the crowd. Kyle Lowry brought his game, to Toronto, really stepped his level of play up. And they ran that pick and roll to death in games 3 and 4 against Cleveland. And in games 3 and 4, for Cleveland, Kevin Love played horribly. Kyrie played horribly. And, Cleveland, they stumped their toes. Now you move on to game 5 and things return to I think what everyone thought that this series would be, a complete and total disrespectful beatdown from Cleveland, to Toronto. I mean, it was a 40-point game, man. Cleveland totally dismantled Toronto when they came back home for game 5. 31-point halftime lead for the Cavaliers. Kevin Love, 19 points in the first half. All 3 of the big 3 scored over 20 points, over 23 points in that game 5 victory. And Cleveland came away with the game 5 victory, going back to Toronto up 3-2. Now, this is, like I said in the previous podcast, the playoffs are a game-by-game basis and a game-by-game situation. And this series is exactly what I'm talking about. How can you be in Toronto, be in the Raptors, and pretty much control games 3 and 4, and then you come back to Cleveland and look like you've never picked up a basketball before? It's quite perplexing. I know that Dwayne Casey, the coach of the Toronto Raptors, was confused into the lack of effort and the lack of intensity that his team played with in game 5, and Cleveland took full advantage of that. They played well. They played defense, completely different than they played in Toronto, played that pick and roll pretty well in Cleveland, and they come away with the blowout game 5 victory.
And again, I really feel like the play of Kyrie Irving is the difference in the series. When Kyrie plays well, Cleveland plays well, and Cleveland has come out with the victory in those 3 games. Those 2 games in Toronto, he didn't play well at all, didn't shoot well from the field, didn't get his teammates involved, and was frustrated a bit by Kyle Lowry on the defensive end. So if Kyrie Irving can get it going tonight against the Raptors, then Cleveland's going to be all right. But there's another thing that can happen. The best player in the world, LeBron James, can flip that switch, which we've yet to see him do in these playoffs. But we know at any time he can flip that switch. 30-something, 40-something point game where he just takes over and puts his team in a position to where they can't be beat. That hadn't been his style because he's just surrounded with such a plethora of talent, and he's been able to trust his teammates. There's going to be a moment where LeBron James says enough is enough and I got to put this thing away. And we may see that here in game 6 in Toronto.
Yeah, tonight's game, Pierre, is going to be very interesting for both Toronto and Cleveland. Toronto feels comfortable at home like most teams do in a playoff situation, playoff setting. Cleveland, led by LeBron James, they've been in this situation before where they can close out a team, and pretty much they have closed out who they need to close out in these playoffs. So I think it's going to come down to game 6, who makes the most adjustments. Cleveland made a great adjustment on Toronto's pick and roll in game 5, and that really disrupted Toronto's offense because they really don't do anything but high pick and roll. That's all they do all game long. Dwayne Casey didn't make a single adjustment during Game 5 that resulted in that blowout victory. Now, if Kevin Love and Kyrie can travel their games from Cleveland to Toronto, I think that Cleveland is going to close out Toronto. Great story for the Raptors this season, but they're not on the same level as Cleveland.